Hey there, I'm Taylor. I'm a Cat 5 crit racer, and I'm here in Richardson, Texas for the TurboVelo Tuesday night crit. It is late August and it is hot out here. It's about 102 degrees right now with a 10 to 15 mile an hour wind out of the east-southeast. So it's basically like when you open an oven door and it blasts you in the face. That's what the weather is out here today. Last week I made a video and I thought I was in the draft a lot of the time, but it turned out I wasn't. So today my goal is, well, number one goal, don't crash. Number two goal, don't get lapped. Number three goal, stay sheltered as much as possible. So I want to be behind somebody and downwind of somebody, sheltered all day. We'll see how it goes. I'll see you out there. Really quick before we get to the footage, I want to talk a little about me and my bike. So I am 6'3" and I weigh about 180 pounds, and I'm riding a Canyon Grizzle 6 AL. So a gravel bike, not a road race bike. And here we are at the beginning of the race. This race, today we had about 28 riders starting, so pretty big field. And like I said, it was warm. The temperature reading is a little misleading, but not quite 113, and a wind out of the south or the southeast. So pretty typical start here. Nobody rocketed off the front, and I'm just trying to sit in the middle of the pack and hang with them. There's a group of 2 or 3 up the road here, and the group I'm in decides they need to get brought back. So they start pushing and I start pushing to stay on the wheel. This is something I really focused on today. I know I said my primary focus was going to be staying in the draft, but also I wanted to close down gaps quickly, meaning ramping the power way up to close the gap and then ramping the power way back down. So you saw there I went up to about 600 watts and then back down to 0. That's a big difference from what I normally do, which is just holding a consistent, 200 or 300 watts. So intentional strategy this week, and I think it worked out. This is still the first lap. You can see I'm trying to come up on the inside of this corner, and I put myself in the wind a little bit here, but we've got a bit of a tailwind, and there's a big group, and there's that guy that went off the front. So I'm thinking I need to gain some wheels, and I can do that by taking the inside line through this turn, putting in a little bit of power, and then slotting in behind someone, which is exactly what I do. So I'm happy with that little maneuver, but maybe I could have done it better by staying in more of a draft while doing more or less the same thing. About half a lap later, you can see I'm behind somebody, but I'm taking the crosswind from the left, and then this rider comes up on my left, and I decide, okay, I'm gonna hop over to him so that I can be sheltered, be on the downwind side of him, but still behind him. And that was my goal for the day, so it felt good about noticing that this was happening and switching over, but obviously not great to be out in that crosswind in the first place. A quarter lap later, and this guy on the front right puts in an attack, and the whole group decides to chase him back. So this is actually the maximum power output for me in the entire race. I get above 1,000 watts, which is huge for me. Like I said, trying to push up to get on somebody's wheel and stay there, but I come into this corner too fast. I don't have the confidence, so I take this corner super wide, basically drop myself, and then have to put in another huge effort back up to 1,000 watts again to close down that gap I just made and try to get on somebody else's wheel. So tactics there, not great, but I'm happy with the power output at least. A lap later, we're coming into the start-finish line, and I try to make up a few wheels by moving by everybody on the right. For some reason, there's an opening, so I'll go for it. But then a couple of people go off the front with another attack, so the pace picks way up. We're already going 26 miles an hour, but you can see they're making a bit of a gap there. So these guys are trying to close it down, and I'm trying to stay on the wheel, like I said. So pushing up to 300, 400 watts, not as big of an effort as before, but still big. And I know it looks like I'm out in the wind a little bit here, and I am, but we're coming into this corner, and it's going to be a headwind section / crosswind, and I want to be on the right side, so I'm trying to position myself to be in a good spot here. And you can see this rider in front of me got pushed out into the grass and came back on the road, so good thing he didn't crash, but a little dicey. This is where things start to go south for me. You can see I was in a pretty good position there, but then this rider in front of me, number 564, I think his name's Amir, he pulls ahead of the group I'm in a little bit, and I try to stick on his wheel. And this isn't bad, but it's kind of the same situation I was in last week, where I'm not pulling necessarily, but I'm also only behind one person, so I'm not getting as much of a draft as if I was in the middle of the pack. But like I said, this is where things go south for me, so I hope you like this guy in front of me because you're going to be seeing a lot more of him. Just half a lap later, still the same guy in front of me, and you can see he's putting in digs to try to drop me and the rest of the group, and I'm making a big effort to stay on his wheel because I want to stay in that draft and not let him get away. In retrospect, probably what I should have done was let him get away and have another rider in the group chase him down rather than having me do the work. But, you know, live and learn, and hopefully next week I can do better. Half a lap later, you guessed it, I'm still chasing Amir, and we got this guy coming up on my left. It looks like he's going to do an attack, but then he stops pedaling and starts coasting. So I think he was trying to bait me, or maybe Amir, into attacking. And, I mean, I kind of fell for it. You can see I'm off the front here, but I felt like at the time I was soft pedaling, looking at my wattage, definitely wasn't. So I don't know what I'm thinking here. His strategy worked. He baited me into pulling for at least a little bit of a lap. About a lap later, and it's a familiar sight. Same guy on my left goes off, but you'll notice I'm not trying to stay on these wheels right now, and that's because this is a prime lap, so there's a reward for finishing first on this lap. I don't remember what the reward is. I think it might be pickle juice, but I wasn't interested in the prime lap, and I figured, gambled I guess, that the group would slow down after crossing the start-finish line for this prime. And I didn't want to get completely dropped, so I let a lot of riders pass me and then tried to hang on to the back of the group. But I think I played this all right, and I didn't get dropped, and the group did. I mean, we're still going pretty fast right here, but you know, I didn't get dropped, and I think that was the right strategy for this prime lap. About half a lap later, I feel like I'm always doing this, moving up on the corners, and this worked out pretty well for me. You can see I gained a lot of wheels without having to put in a huge amount of effort, and there's a guy out front of me, so I'm in the draft. Overall, pretty happy with that little maneuver. About half a lap later, I'm trying to stay on the sheltered side here, but these two guys are on a team. You can see they're wearing the same kit, and I have to grab a little bit of brake right there because this guy squeezes me out. He's in front, you know, no harm, no foul. But I was trying to stay on the sheltered side, and instead I had to drop back and eat this crosswind in order to stay up with these two guys. Not too long after that, this second teammate pulls up, and I like what he does here, and I was paying attention to his maneuvers. So you can see he starts on the right side, and he just drifts slowly over to the left, because he doesn't want to be giving me a draft. So he's trying to dump the draft into the gutter so that I have to sit on his wheel and take the crosswind here. So kudos to him for that maneuver. That was great. And he did this over and over throughout the race. So well done. Just half a lap later, that same rider does the same maneuver. You can see he's drifting from left to right across the course to dump his draft off to the side, but also what he does here is basically stops pedaling to force me to either get in front or slow way down. I choose to slow down, but again, I'm eating some wind here and I'm at the front of the group, but I'm only doing 150 watts, so not a big deal. And then this other rider comes up on my left, so I'm gonna sit in his draft and let him do the work. Unfortunately for me, that rider was well rested and wanted to put a gap between me and him, and he succeeds. You can see I'm about redlining when it comes to heart rate, and he was pushing to try to drop me. You can see he's looking back, and he did drop me. I pulled off to the side essentially and let the group know I'm not chasing him anymore. You can see the group catching up with him on the right, but this was at my limit. I didn't have anything else to give, so I had to let him get away. Half a lap later, and this is in the final lap, I'm completely toasted at this point. You can see I'm putting in 300 watts and the group is just putting a gap between me. This rider on my left, his name's Paul, he was talking to me before the ride, and he comes past me, he says, "Hey, grab on, let's catch the group." I say, okay, I'll give it one more dig, get on his wheel. I'm putting in 500 watts here, and I just can't do it. I was feeling so bad at this point. For 10 out of the 11 laps of the race, I was feeling great, and then start of the 11th lap, I felt like I was gonna throw up and just didn't have anything left in my legs. So I had to let him go, had to let the group go. I knew the race was over for me, I just had to finish up the lap. Really quick note here, if you watch my shadow, you'll see that I take both hands off the handlebars. I am super tired, just trying to breathe, and even so, you shouldn't do that. Keep your hands on the handlebars at all times during a race. So don't follow my example. About 2 minutes later, I finally crossed the finish line and finished this race. I had my hands off the handlebars again, and the judge rightfully yelled at me. Thankfully, I did not get disqualified. Thank you, Judge. And I ended up finishing 21st. There were 7 other guys who got dropped or lapped, so I was last of the people who finished all of the laps. So I kind of achieved my goal here. I mostly stayed in the draft, but I definitely spent too much time near the front. And next week I want to focus on being in the back, in the middle of the group, rather than technically in the draft, but only behind maybe one person. So that's it for this week. See you next week.